Then Donald Trump has issued an order accusing the Smithsonian Institution of framing American history in a, quote, improper and negative light. The order puts Vice President J.D. Vance in charge of overseeing efforts to, quote, remove improper ideology from all areas of the institution. Trump singled out the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the Women's History Museum, and the American Art Museum. Civil rights advocates, historians, and black political leaders have sharply rebuked Trump's order.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so in today's episode, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump, and he has decided to come after Black American history. He recently signed an executive order ensuring that he's going to be removing the Black American history from the Smithsonian Institute.
Right, and in the same breath, he also signed an order where he is ordering for the Confederate symbols to be brought back. And this, he says, is because he wants to restore back the right ideology, the right history to America.
Right, guys, I don't know what your thoughts and opinion are on this. You can write us on the comment section. Also consider subscribing, and then we come back and talk about it. Let's watch.
Donald Trump has issued an executive order attacking the National Museum of African American History and Culture and threatening to remove funding from programs that promote what he calls an improper ideology. After days of failing to explain why his defense secretary was texting top secret war plans to a reporter, Trump is attacking black people to distract from Signalgate. The new executive order issued on Thursday attacks national museums for interrogating institutional racism. The horror! Imagine a museum in a country founded on slavery and segregation having the audacity to explore the history of racism. This museum is one of the most popular museums in America, receiving 1.6 million visitors last year alone. Trump claims his order is designed to restore the Smithsonian to its rightful place as a symbol of inspiration and American greatness. So the guy who knows nothing about American history and thought that Frederick Douglass was alive just a few years ago thinks the only way we can celebrate American greatness is by whitewashing history and erasing the legacy of racism. So what does this executive order do? Nothing! Yep, you heard it. It does absolutely nothing except to distract from his Signalgate scandal, stir outrage from black people, and convince his white MAGA supporters that he's sticking it to the colors. The order says the vice president, in consultation with a bunch of other people, shall work to effectuate Trump's goals through his role on the Smithsonian Board of Regents. All this does is tell J.D. Vance to be an asshole on the Board of Regents that governs the Smithsonian. There are 17 members on the board, including several prominent Democrats, and J.D. Vance is just one of them, so he has no authority to make this happen. The order also says the vice president and the OMB director shall work with Congress to try to stop funding from programs that divide Americans based on race. That could have been an email or a public group chat. All it does is tell J.D. Vance to try to get Congress to cut funding for black exhibits that Trump doesn't like. The order does not cut funding for this museum or any other museum in the Smithsonian, and Trump doesn't have the authority to do so anyway. For the National Museum of African American History behind me, it's important to remember that 46% of its $81 million budget comes from federal appropriations, but most of the funding comes from private donations and general trust funds. So even if Trump and Vance convince the Republican Congress to cut funding, we as Americans can make up the annual $37 million in potential lost funding from the government for a few years until we get rid of these clowns in the White House. But here's the kicker. The same executive order that purports to restore truth and sanity to American history instructs the Department of Interior to reinstate Confederate monuments that were removed during the Biden administration. Yes, they're eliminating black contributions to American history. At the same time, they're celebrating the most racist white contributions, slavery, and Civil War. You see, the Biden administration removed an infamous Confederate memorial here at Arlington National Cemetery and renamed military bases that had been named after Confederate generals. For those who don't remember history, the Confederates were the bad guys in the Civil War who broke away from the United States to preserve slavery. Trump doesn't like them being portrayed as bad guys. So let's review here. Trump's executive order does nothing to the National Museum of African American History and Culture except get people talking about it, which means it's all a distraction from the scandal over the Yemen attack, which itself was a distraction from the economy, according to Pete Hegseth's text message on Signal. This guy is like the opposite of Commissioner Gordon turning on the bat signal in Gotham. Whenever Trump gets in trouble, he turns on the chat signal, and all of the racists in MAGA world come running to his defense.
I've seen a lot of videos about people sitting it out for April 5th. And I just want to remind folks that they are literally desecrating our history. They are intentionally trying to remove our history. And it don't have to be April 5th. But at some point, people are going to have to realize that the vote may be one step, but it ain't all the steps. We gonna have to get active. And I said this months ago when people were like, oh, they gonna F around and find out, that ultimately the finding out always ends up heavily on us. And sitting it out and watching from the sideline, while not only they take away our history, but shapeshift the narrative of our history, it is only going to continue to be to our detriment. As someone who's lived in other countries where that has been done, in places like Egypt, where they still claim that Egyptians weren't Black people, we're inside some of the inner structures of the pyramids and temples. And I have seen with my own eye, they've lightened the structures of the people drawn on the wall. In places like Mexico, where if you've gone to the Tulum ruins, you learn how missionaries came and burned their book, their historical book, their medicinal book, to the point where they have lost a big portion of their Mayan and Aztec culture, languages, beliefs, so forth and so on. If you think it can't happen, it's already happening. The question is, what are folks willing to do to stop it and change it?
All right, y'all. He is absolutely coming for our Blacksonian. There is no doubt about it. He specifically name-checked the National Museum of African American History and Culture in his latest executive order. Everything we feel about that is justified. If you are sickened, outraged, sad, incensed, all of it is legit. Because we know why he's coming for us. We know what our history teaches people. And we also know it is dangerous to be a people with no memory. But I always want us to remember, that's not us. Our history, our memory doesn't exist because of that building. That building exists because we were wise enough to preserve our memory. Every single artifact in that building exists because somebody thought enough of what we created and we built and who we are, thought enough of generations yet unborn to preserve the memory. Against all odds, against all threats, our ancestors and our elders thought enough of us, generations they may never see or know, to keep the thing, to hide it under a floorboard, to whisper a story in secret, to pass the word in a newspaper we owned and printed even when those offices and printing presses got torched, to preach it in churches even when those churches got bombed, to teach it in schools that we created and funded even when they came to shut those schools down. Somebody was wise enough to sing the memory in coded language and then record it in somebody's basement. Somebody was wise enough to write the family tree of the family we weren't supposed to have in the front page of that Bible, to plant the memory on somebody's field, to cook it in somebody's potbelly stove, to photograph it on somebody's hand-me-down camera, to paint it on bits and scraps of paper. Somebody was wise enough to style the memory on somebody's chest, to braid it into somebody's scalp. Somebody was wise enough and thoughtful enough and loved us enough to read and write the memory, even when reading and writing it meant almost certain death. All of these things were how we preserved memory when there was no museum, when there was no Netflix special, no Oprah's book club selection. It was dangerous work, and yet we knew it was necessary and righteous for the sake of a future of a people. Black people's memory has mattered long before we ever had a monument. And preserving that memory has preserved us. Those blueprints are how we got over. That's how we survived. That's how we sustained for generations in abjectly hostile territory. Our memory is how we built a future for a people that were supposed to be wiped out by now. A present for a people who were always supposed to be past. Our survival was supposed to be an impossibility, but instead, African people, chained and enslaved and ripped from their motherland, took the memory of that place, took the memory of our many languages and faiths and tribes and traditions and family structures and ways of being and values and created a new people in order to be protected and to persist. African American is a whole new creation based on the memory we preserved. That's who we are. So now more than ever, we're going to have to act like we know who we are. We are going to need those blueprints to survive, and we're going to need to preserve the memory we're creating now to build the future we deserve. So I'm not saying we shouldn't be outraged. We should. I'm not saying organized outrage doesn't work. Y'all know I believe it absolutely does. I'm not saying we shouldn't protect that building and everything in it and everybody in it. We absolutely have to. And we should always know our memory and the things made up of it made us a worthy people before we ever had a monument to ourselves. So we got to act like it. We're going to have to be the reason why we never lose a recipe. Now's the time, y'all. I love you.
Look, as a member of the 92%, I totally get why Black women wanted to sit this out and to rest. Because by the mere fact that our entire existence as Black women is politicized, we have been fighting our entire life for the cause, oftentimes without the recognition and support that is needed to sustain us both mentally and physically. Now begs the question how long we can continue to remain silent in the face of such obvious atrocities that are happening against us and to our neighbors. Because the reality is, African Americans is one of the original targets and victims of American violence, and now it's no different. The Smithsonian for African American History and Culture, as well as the Women's Smithsonian, is now under attack due to Trump's most recent executive order, deeming that these institutions are spreading false narratives as well as division ideology. Which tells me that in order to be considered a true and proud American, you have to be willing to deny the facts and the true history of this country. So for those who have been boycotting both publicly and silently, if you have a little bit of extra cash, I highly encourage you to donate directly to the Smithsonians as they continue to try to preserve the true history of America, one that includes African Americans, because African American history is world history.
To remove what he calls anti-American ideology from our museums. He also cited that he wants to restore monuments and memorials that have been removed in recent years. You know, the Confederate things that have been removed, statues that have been taken down. The White House is taking issue with the fact that museums are helping to reconstruct American history as inherently oppressive, sexist, racist, or otherwise flawed. Unfortunately for them, this is not revisionism. This is the truth. We live in a nation that was founded on slavery, that was founded on stripping land from the natives that were already here and forcing them into substandard living conditions. It would be a long while before they had the right to due process. And we still live in a nation and where African Americans still have not gained equality. This is not a history that we should be proud of. If they wanted us to be proud of American history, they would undo the errors of the past. But instead, what we're seeing today is a continuation of those errors. Given the prison system and mass deportations, we're seeing all new mistakes aimed at the same people who have been oppressed in this nation since its very beginning. So this is not inaccurate history or anti-American. This is the true American story. And Trump wants to erase that.
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about the videos you just played in the comment section, right? You know, my main question is, why is Donald Trump attacking the Black American history, you know? But it doesn't take a genius for them to fill out this question. Another thing I want to ask is, why doesn't he focus the same energy he's using to try and whitewash history and to try and, okay, let me not get overzealous, but why doesn't he focus that same energy on trying to do the right thing and trying to repair the societies the correct way? Because doing this, I feel like, will only alienate the Black community from the white community, and that does not bring unity into their society, you know.
Right. And you know, I had someone on TikTok say that right now they want to get rid of the Black history because TikTok made it so easy for palm-colored babies that are now growing up to start seeing, because like through TikTok, Black creators teach these things every day, and palm-colored babies are growing up knowing what their forefathers really truly did. And like back in the olden days where it wasn't allowed for white babies to be taught this kind of history because it was said that they were being emotionally damaged by things they were not responsible for. So this person on TikTok, this creator was saying, when these palm-colored babies see such videos on TikTok, it makes them question the real true history of America, because at the end of the day, Black history is American history. And when this kind of kids, they are now grandkids to people like the Orange Man, when they go to people like the Orange Man and ask people like the Orange Man, did this and that truly happen in history? Why did you all do this? And this creator was also saying that TikTok made Black Americans seem human to palm-colored babies that are now growing up, such that now some palm-colored population can be able to see injustices when they're happening, all because they have been sensitized by creators on TikTok.
Right. And you ask yourself, why is it that they don't want to see? I feel like they're laying ground for something that is to come. They're planning something, but that's just my opinion. I don't know what you guys have to say about that, yeah? And let's talk about the Confederate monument that they want to bring it back. Yeah, there's a reason why it was taken down, and there's history behind it. Yeah, I know for non-Americans, they might not know the history behind that monument. Yeah, so let me just Google something about the Confederate monument. Yeah, so Google says Confederate monuments erected across the US, particularly during the Jim Crow era. Even look at the time that it was erected, yeah, during the Jim Crow era. And I'm assuming a lot of you here know about Jim Crow, even the non-Americans who are watching, yeah. So it was erected during the Jim Crow era, commemorate Confederate soldiers and leaders, often promoting the lost cause narrative and white supremacy, sparking ongoing debates about their historical context and continued presence. So if I can just speak about the Jim Crow era, that was the era known for separation and segregation. You know, if you were a certain color, you were meant to be on somewhere different from the white people. So that was quite an era for you to erect monuments. And if people had feelings of segregation and separation during that time, can you imagine, in honor of whatever they were bringing, whatever they were erecting, what would that monument, what message would it pass? You understand that they want it to be brought back. Exactly what message is it going to pass to the Black American community and America in general? Because I do believe also, as you said, white kids are taught a different type of history. So only God knows what they've been told about the history of the Confederate monument, you know.
Yeah, and by wiping out Black American history from places like the Smithsonian, it will help with them desensitizing white people from Black people's pain. So I feel like, just as you said, they're setting stage for recolonization or slavery, recolonization of Black America, such that when a few years passes and people start forgetting, especially white America, they will start to put in measures to bring back slavery or recolonization of Black people, especially after they have desensitized other palm-colored people against the Black plight. So it will be easier for them to treat black people like they're not humans.
And you guys, let me tell you one thing, yeah? You might be wondering, why is it that Africans are not angry enough? Why is it that, because from a surface level, that is how it would seem, yeah? Why is it that Africans seem to be too trusting when it comes to the palm-colored man? Why is it that the palm-colored man can come into Africa, enjoy their safaris,
and freely walk without having to
wonder
look
about
back?
their safety, you know? Guys, let me ask you one question. Let's take a country like Philippines. Let's take a country like Colombia. How many cases have you ever heard of a palm-colored person coming to visit Africa and being kidnapped? That's a genuine question I want to ask. How many?
Unless they visit the very, very unsafe countries where there is militia, and the militia people want to kidnap them for ransom because of money.
Yeah, but in general, like, can we just take the statistics and then compare that? How many? So in general, I would say that they're very safe and free to walk in Africa as they wish and as they please, and Africans love on them. Do you know that a great part of Africa's history was truly wiped out and burnt to ashes, and whatever little was left with our great grandparents? And let me just speak
in the brain. Grandparents, great grandparents, they never used to tell these stories, I guess, because of the trauma.
They used to, and then it got to a point where it stopped. First of all, let me talk about Kenya, our country. After the colonial power left, and then we were left with our president, Jomo Kenyatta, the first president of Kenya, right? So these were, okay, Africa has always suffered from implants of president, yeah? So genuinely, they're gonna be promoting what is best for the Western power, right? And then we had our second president, Moi. So this president, they were what was called the neo-colonialists. They came in and they did what was best for them, and that meant people could not even create a revolt against them, because in Moi's era, that was our second president, I did hear that they used to kidnap people who used to speak up against certain things. So can you imagine the trauma our grandparents had to live with, for them to be shut, for them to be completely told not to talk about anything or remember anything or pass down anything in generations? What am I trying to say? Right now, Africa is a shell, and it has been molded, in short, and people have forgotten their history. We don't have records, and some were thrown in the Indian Ocean, if not burnt.
And others are sitting at the MI6 headquarters, is what an MI6 agent once said.
So truly, Africans do not know what the ancestors went through. They can only imagine, but truly they have forgotten what the ancestors went through, right?
Yeah, I even had another creator one day say that Africans knew how to make medicine for all diseases, you know,
because there are still communities that can do that
using just plants alone. And when, you know, these sort of people came, yeah, they took records of how these medicines were being made, they did this and that, and then they made it illegal in some parts of Africa for medicine to be made like that, because according to them, they knew better. They came and said this could be poisonous and harmful to the body. And this is what Africans were using even before they came to Africa. And what these people did, they later turned around, and the notes they took from these herbal plantation medicines and all that, they started making medicine in Europe, patterned medicine, and made it illegal for Africans to make the same medicine. So then they went and patterned it and started selling it. So Africans started buying their medicine. Oh my! Anyway, you guys, you see where we are going.
What you're saying in short is, if this administration manages to do what they're saying they're going to be doing,
we see Black Americans ending up on this side of history, where they will no longer remember down generations to come.
Exactly, because how long do you think already the generation right now, the very young generation in America, are living obliviously, and it's not just America alone, across the world. In Africa, in Asia, you know, the young generation, they're living obliviously. They've been distracted by technology, they've been distracted by TV shows, by Hollywood, by whatever. So the last thing the young generation might want to do is sit down and learn history, right?
Or deal with the traumatic events that happen.
They consider that boring stuff, you know. And with such generations being bred, I feel like whatever Donald Trump is planning to do might come out to be successful. But question is, what are they what plan are they laying for the future?
Right now, Africa is still under some kind of colonialism, you know. So I bet they want to recolonize the brains of Black Americans, because right now they can't do that when too many of them are
millennials. There's a good number of millennials going up or down. Good number of millennials going up are aware. They're aware. They're woke. They know when something is happening. They know exactly
when
what
something
it
is about to happen. They know how to recognize the patterns.
Right.
And I feel like with such laws, they want to start scrambling your brain so that when they finally land the final blow, you won't see it coming.
Yeah, they want to work on the younger generation. But guys, that's just our opinion. Let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section.
Right, because we could be wrong also. This is just speculations and opinions. We are here to learn at the end of we are here to learn at the end of the day. Right, so let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section, and also consider subscribing if you're new to our channel, and we'll see you on our next episode.